Again, please use our Telegram to chat for chatting. Are you seeing my screen now? Okay, good. I'm receiving this. It says that okay, good. Okay, so today's sessions is gonna be about maybe I'll see maybe about 30 minutes to 1 hour, depending on how well you receive the information from me. We can do discussion with our Telegram so that the chatting will not disturb our session. So I'll start a session with the CompTIA Security Plus exam number. The latest one is SY0501. That's the latest one. Just for your information, by April this year, CompTIA will actually change the exam, but I'm not very sure when. Yeah, we will wait for the principal CompTIA to actually release the news, the latest news. Everyone, can you hear me? Just type yes in your Telegram. Okay, great. Okay, so I can see that we have about 43 to almost 50 participants. Good to see you here. Although we cannot meet up physically in a specific location, virtually we have the what do you call this, the teleconferencing or something like a meetup here. Yeah. So let's start with the first lesson. I actually I supposed to discuss Network Plus for our first session, but unfortunately I haven't got the latest slide from CompTIA, so this is what I'm going to present. Okay, let me introduce. This is me. Some of you have seen or perhaps know me. Yeah. So I'm Semi. You can. This is my number. You have this number +62858 13256600. That's my email. Yeah. So if you have any question, feel free to chat in our chat room. And if you have any question, feel free to email me. All right. Okay. So the agenda. Yeah. Please turn off your mic. I received the message here in our Telegram. It says that the latest link of Skype is not accepting members. I believe this is perhaps the limitation of Skype. So anyway, anyone is recording this session? Can you tell me anyone recording the session?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good. Oh, okay, Zaki is recording. Who's Zaki? Zaki is Indonesian or Filipino?
Indonesia, sir.
Okay, good. So let's start with the introduction, the course outline, and I'm going to also give you a very short assessment test. I'll be sending you the assessment test later on. Yeah. Okay, so we start with the introduction about the course outline. Can you see? Okay, so we have identifying security fundamental, and then analyzing risk. Let me get back and let me just record this session as well, so that I also have. I think it's somebody's recording, right? Okay, so yeah, recording is already there. So we'll start the recording again. Yeah. Okay, so let me start with the introduction again, since I was not able to see the recording. Okay, you can actually record the class in case you need to repeat the class or the session. So welcome to CompTIA Security Plus exam number SY0-501 or 501. My name is Semi, you know about me, so I'll just skip this one. So our agenda today, our agenda today is the first one is introduction. Yeah, so it's just about the introduction, about the class, about me, and I'll be showing you the course outline. So this is what we are going to learn in the next few days. So the first topic is about identifying security fundamentals. The second topic is analyzing risk. Please turn off your mic. Please turn off your mic. Okay. So the second topic or subject we're going to discuss is analyzing risk. Then the third one is identifying threats. Yeah. Please turn off your mic. I'm hearing babies crying. Ada yang nggak itu turn mic-nya nggak di stop, tolong dong. Okay. So the third one is identifying security threats. Then the fourth one is conducting security assessment, followed by implementing host and software security, then implementing network security, followed by managing identity and access. Then we will also discuss implementing cryptography, implementing operational security, addressing security incidents, and finally ensuring business continuity. Okay, so these are the topics that we are going to discuss. Yeah, I can hear someone is not turning off the mic. Please turn off the mic. So if you're unable to, if your friend or friends are unable to attend the class, we can share the video or the recording, okay, to help those who are not able to attend the class. Okay, so these are the topics. Just give me a minute. I'm checking other courses. I mean the slides. So please check again if your mics are off. Okay. How many participants we have now? Oh, 73. I believe that we can still, what do you call this? Some of you can still connect to or join the meeting, join the class. Okay, so the first topic or the domain in Security Plus is this one, identifying security fundamentals. Okay. I can still hear the mic on. Okay, so the first topic or domain in this Security Plus is this one, identifying security fundamentals. And we have several topics to discuss here. The first one is identify information security concept, and then identifying basic security controls, followed by identify basic authentication and authorization concept, as well as identifying basic cryptography concept. Okay. Yeah. So this is actually the basic things that we need to understand about information security. In terms of definition, information security is the protection of available information or information resources from unauthorized access, attack, theft, or data damage. Okay. Now, why we need information security, right? That's the first thing to ask. Yeah. So the objective of information security, if you look at the, sorry, I can still hear the mic. Can you turn off, please? Okay, so the idea of having the information security is to make sure that we can actually protect whatever we have, information or any information resources from unauthorized access, attack, theft, or data damage, right? And then you need to make sure that responsible individuals or organization to secure your confidential data. For example, if I am the owner of the company or a particular organization, I would like to have someone or team or group of people who are responsible for the for protecting our confidential data. What type of confidential data should we actually protect? Many. It could be as simple as information related to employees, staff, HR data, maybe like PII to be precise, or maybe like patients data, the health information. Now, basically, all data needs to be protected, no matter what type of data we have. Now, the idea is to minimize the risk and consequences. Like, for example, we can say consequences here is the impact. Okay, of losing crucial data. So that's the idea of information security. Now, if you really look at the, I would say the comparison between information security and cyber security, I can say that information security consists of any type of data, which could be in the form of electronic or maybe non-electronic data. So basically, electronic and non-electronic type of data or type of information, while cybersecurity mostly focuses on electronic type of data. Okay, so that's the difference between information security. So again, cybersecurity has about 95% of focus on protecting electronic data and electronic form of data, while information security has 100% of protecting any type of data, which could be electronic type or non-electronic type of data. All right. Now, let's look at the goal. Just give me a minute. I need to drink. So let's look at the goal. We have 3 different information security goals here. The first one is about prevention. So prevention means that we need to make sure that our informations are protected from any type of security breaches and attacks. And of course, preventing unauthorized access to information is our top priority. Now, the second security goals is detection. This is where we should be able to discover any attempts to access our data, our information, or maybe any information that could be lost because of the attack. Then detection also include investigating individuals or groups of people by scanning the data or any traces for intruders. This will be further discussed in CISA and some other courses. Yeah, so we need to have detection capability, as well as the last one, which is recovery. Recovery is more about how we can actually recover from any, I would say, disaster, any intrusion that can cause data to be damaged, yeah, or compromised, or maybe something related to, APT, a group of people who are specialized in stealing data, or even crashing your system. Yeah, so you need to make sure that you can actually recover the lost or stolen physical resources. That would be our recovery as the information security goals. So again, 3 different types of information security goals: prevention, detection, and recovery. All right, so let's move on a bit to risk. Well, I believe that many of you might have already quite, I would say, understand or quite familiar with this risk concept, yeah, which is actually a concept that indicates exposure to the chance of damage or loss and signifies the likelihood of hazard or dangerous threat. So we have several elements in risk. We'll be talking about that later on. So we're focusing here on the IT risk, which is normally associated with system, power, network, and physical losses. Yeah, which also can affect people, practices, and processes. Yeah, and remember that previously we discussed, or I have presented, that all forms of data, yeah, must be protected. So organization, companies, enterprises must have known the risk and should take the risk into account, meaning that you need to make sure that you understand what are your risks when information security is designed and implemented. For example, like, in this graphic, we can see that disgruntled former employees would have likelihood of rare, but the damage would be moderate. Yeah, so threat of improper access could also be an example of the risk. Again, please mute your mic. I can still hear some noises. Now, back to the risk. The first component of the risk is actually here. The threat. Threat is the first component in the risk. Okay. Now we'll talk about the threat later on. Yeah, threat could be anything. Yeah, could be physical related threat, like for example, cyber attack, or maybe like burglar. or maybe robbery. That would be our threat. Now, vulnerabilities or vulnerability is our second important element in risk. Yeah, so vulnerabilities is or they are actually any condition that leaves a device open to harm. Yeah, like for example, if you use insecure or weak password, poor security policy, or maybe like poorly designed network, misuse of software, communication protocols, software or operating system, and even something as simple as unchecked user input that might, what do you call this, trigger the problem with our application. Or most commonly, this unchecked user input or unvalidated user input could cause a damage. Attacker or hackers can actually use some kind of injection attack, like a SQL injection attack, command injection attack, LDAP injection attack, and so on and so forth. Yeah. Back to the threats. In definition, threats are any event or action that could potentially cause damage to an asset. Yeah, any potential cause damage. Yeah. So, for example, like possible threats would be like the interruption of services, changes to information, interruption of access, damage to our hardware, or even damage to facilities. Right? Okay, perhaps hello? Yeah, I'm still hearing some noises. Okay, so think about any threats to our self as a human. Yeah, like for example, threats of getting infected with virus. As you know, with corona, COVID-19 is an example of a threat. Yeah, so the actual threat would actually happen when we got infected, right? If we are vulnerable to the virus attack. Now, attacks or attack is a technique used by the attacker or hacker to exploit any vulnerability in application or physical computer system without the authorization to do so. Yeah. So, for example, physical security attacks, software-based attacks, social engineering attack, web application-related attacks such as the one I mentioned earlier, SQL injection, or even network-based attack like distributed denial of service attack, denial of service attack, distributed denial of service attack, Trojans attack, and so on. Now, what about controls? Now, this particular term is normally used by people like auditors. They like to use these controls. Basically, controls are countermeasures that you can put in place to avoid, mitigate, or counteract security risk due to threats and attacks. So controls could be a countermeasure or even a safeguard. Okay? The difference between countermeasure and safeguard is that safeguard is the control that you put in place before even an incident happened. Like, for example, you have created several policies, information security policies in your organization. So that would be considered to be safeguards. Or maybe something like you have placed a firewall in your organization. Yeah, firewall is an example of
Screen.
Yeah, firewall is an example of
Screen doesn't appear.
okay, screen does not appear. Let me see. Please do not use the. Okay, let me show you again. Can you see my screen?
No.
No.
What? Earlier it was okay, right? Can you see it now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So which one? Yeah, this one. Can you see?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So we got
See it.
threats, attacks, controls. Okay. Let me repeat. Controls are countermeasures that you need to put in place to avoid, mitigate, or counteract security risk due to threats and attacks, right? Now, somehow, in some other books, you might seen different type of security controls. Sometimes they use different terminologies like safeguards. Safeguards are control which are put in place, okay, before even the incident happened, such as, for example, security policies, or maybe a firewall that you have specifically placed before the incident happened to avoid incident to happen. Now, the second terminology known as countermeasure or countermeasures are controls you put in place when you have been attacked, or maybe it was actually placed to remediate or to fix something that was missing when the attack actually happened. Okay, so safeguard is a proactive way of placing your control, while countermeasure is the reactive way of placing your control to remediate things that you have, not in place previously. Okay, so you have to understand the difference between countermeasures and safeguards. Just remember that safeguards equals to proactive controls, while countermeasures are the reactive controls. Okay, so safeguard and countermeasures. So controls, it's control, or I would say controls are the generic form of safeguards and countermeasures. Auditors like to use controls rather than safeguards and countermeasures. Okay, that could be any physical or logical, like for example, your door, your CCTV, your correction controls, such as perhaps policy or policies. Now, there are types of controls. We can start with the prevention control or preventative control that would help you to prevent a threat or attack from exposing a vulnerability. Then we have detection controls that would help to discover if a threat or vulnerability has entered the computer system. And we have corrective control that would help to mitigate the consequences or impact of a threat or attack from adversely affecting a computer system. Yeah, these are types of controls. Yeah, so basically we have at least three different types of security controls: to prevent, to detect, and to correct. In the next course or courses, you will see more controls to be discussed. But for Security Plus, you just need to know that there are three different types of controls: preventative or prevention, detection, or we call it as detection control, corrective controls, or correction control. Yeah. So prevention, detection, and correction. Now, how about security monitoring process? What is actually security management process? Yeah. So if you look at the graph, we have identification, implementation, and monitoring. So basically, the security management process is the process of identifying security controls, like, for example, detecting problem and determining how best to protect the system. So of course, we need to identify how do we identify, how do we detect problems. You can actually start by assessing your physical and logical security. Then the next step is implementing security control. So once you have identified what are needed to protect your system, maybe like you need to create information security policies, or maybe you need to create, procedures, standards, or even something like a technical security controls, like, for example, Active Directory, or maybe access control. Implementing security control is the second step after you have successfully identified your needed security controls. So basically, implementing security controls are related to installing the control mechanism to prevent problems in a system. Like, for example, you install Active Directory, you install like PAM, or the access control, or network security controls, network access control, VLAN, or maybe something like segmentation, yeah, firewall intrusion prevention system, yeah. That would be more about installing control mechanism. The third step is monitoring security control, yeah, which involve detecting and solving any security issues that arise after you have implemented your security controls. Yeah, so you need to make sure that your security controls work effectively, efficiently. Yeah, so effective is, I believe, more important than efficient. Yeah, but they should be efficient as well as effective, or else your boss will get mad at you. Okay, now there are some activities about identifying information security basics. So for example, if you are a new security administrator of developed tech industries, a manufacturer of home electronics, your new colleagues want to discuss security and how it relates to the business. So what do you think? Okay, let's do discussion. I'll stop the sharing for a while. We'll take a break. Discuss this in our ICDP official chat room, please. Telegram. Okay, so I'll stop this one. We'll take a break for a few minutes while we're discussing this one. Yeah. There you go. All right, guys, shall we continue? Okay, so next is okay. Can you see? Can you hear my voice clearly? Okay, great. So my screen is also shared. So the next one is about CIA. Try it. This is actually the 3 principles of security control and management. Yeah. Mute, please. Mute, please. So 3 principles of security controls and management, which include confidentiality, integrity, and availability. All right. So let's start with confidentiality. Yeah. Keeping information and communications private and protected from unauthorized access. Yeah, that's actually the description of confidentiality here, which could include trades and military secret, personal, health, and tax records. Confidentiality should be controlled via encryption, access control, and steganography. We'll discuss several new terminology or terminologies in our session. Yeah, like for example, steganography is the art of hiding messages or hiding things. You can actually hide text messages in, let's say, a graphic picture. Yeah, that's an example of steganography, or they call it stego. Yeah. Now the second principle is integrity. Keeping organizational information accurate, free of errors, and free from unauthorized modification. It includes modification of task scores or other information stored on network servers. Integrity should be controlled via hashing. Somebody was asking about hashing earlier. Yeah, we'll discuss more about this in our next session. Hashing, digital signatures, certificates, these 3 are actually part of cryptography concept. So we'll discuss this in our next session. Exchange control. Okay, now the last principle here is about availability, which is about ensuring that computer system operate continuously and that authorized person can access data they need. So ensuring that user can actually have the access to the intended data or information is an example of the availability concept. Yeah. So, for example, ensuring that vital data such as radar images are both captured and distributed to airports. Yeah. Or I would say this is actually the example of ensuring availability, making sure that your user can actually access, public information. Is also an example of making sure that availability exists. We have not started with the discussion yet, so I'll keep the question. We can discuss this later. Yeah, Krishna is actually asking just for a while. We have to wait until you have to wait until we have a discussion open. Yeah. So availability should be controlled via redundancy, fault tolerance, and even patching, just to make sure that everything is provided to the legitimate users. Now, there's a concept called non-repudiation. Non-repudiation is to ensure that the party that sends a transmission or created data remains associated with the data and cannot deny sending or creating the data. For example, when you send an email to me with a specific signature, you can actually use like Gmail. And when you use Gmail, you add a tool that would allow you to encrypt your email or your messages. When you send it to me and I replied to you, both of us agreed on something. You cannot deny, or even me, I can't deny that I sent this email to you because you have my signature. I also have your signature. Yeah, signature can be created by using a specific software that would allow you to create a very, what do you call this, a very authentic signature of you in terms of digital signature that would not allow someone to say no to what they have sent. And the second terminology is accountability. Determining who hold responsible for a particular activity or event is about accountability. Okay. Just give me a minute. I need to turn off my phone. I think. Yeah. So it's disturbing me. Anyway, so accountability is about who hold responsible for a particular event. Like, for example, you can actually check the log of your application to determine who actually did the modification, who actually deleted the data. That is about accountability. So accountability can be achieved by providing information such as logs. Yeah, logs can also be an example of detective control that provide accountability to us, for us. Now, beside that, let's move on to identification. Now, in Security Plus, you will also learn about identification, which is the process by which a claim is made about the nature of a particular entity. So, for example, when you email me, you use your email address. That email address is your ID. Or maybe when you send, let's say, a message to our Telegram, you have your own ID, right? Long time ago, we have like the BlackBerry Messenger or BBM. We also have our own unique ID, and even your own, national ID identification can prove who you are. Okay. In computer, you can use IP address, you can use MAC address as the identity of a host, for example. Yeah. Authentication. So beside identity, so you need to have identity in order to move to authentication. Okay. The authentication is the method of validating a particular entity's or individual's unique credential. It's like, giving your ID, your national ID to, let's say, a security guard. When you log on to your PC, you're actually using your identity, like your login, your username. Login, your username and password, sometimes they are actually considered to be credentials, which also prove who you are to the system. So does an individual have the correct credential to a system? Keep credentials secret to prevent unauthorized access. So of course, you need to make sure that your credential, your username and password are kept secret. Yeah, to, of course, to provide the privacy to the user, as if we have the confidential information. Now, there are different types of authentication factors. Yeah, like for example, something you are. Examples, your fingerprints, handprints, and retina pattern. Then something you have, like your key, your ID card. Something you know, like your password or your PIN, personal identification number. And somewhere you are or you are not, like IP address or even GPS location, and something you do, like your keystroke patterns or tracing pictures password. So these are some of the examples of the authentication factors which could be used. You can even use a mixture of something you have and something you are. Yeah. Or maybe like something you have with something you know. Yeah. So that is actually considered to be a two-factor authentication. So when you use two different types of authentication factors, they are considered to be two-factor authentication. All right. Now, when you have the identification, you show your identification to the security guard or to the system. That is called authentication. Then finally, we have the authorization, which is the process of determining what rights and privileges a particular entity has. Like, for example, when you enter with your username, with your username and password, of course, you can also use your, biometric authentication. The system will determine what can you do to a particular system. Yeah. So after authentication and authentications are successful, the system will determine which resources the entity is authorized to access. Yeah. So privileges is actually related to authorization, not about the authentication. Authentication is just about showing that you is you, yeah, or you are you. Now, access control is the process of determining and assigning privileges to resources, objects, and data. Yeah. So access control is about, how the system authorize the person and provide, permission to access resources, which could be anything: printer, computer, user, services, right? So that is considered to be access control. Yeah. So access controls are normally pre-configured by, or set up by the system, like our computer or our operating system. And accounting, we have already discussed about accountability. Accounting is the process of tracking and recording system activities and resource access. Yeah, which could be, the time and date, the username, and so on. So basically, it's about tracking. And normally we can track the activities by looking at, let's say, Windows event logs, or maybe something like application logs. And auditing is the portion of accounting that entails security professional examining logs of what was recorded. So when you do the auditing as an auditor, for example, or as a security professional, you would need to find several things, related to the logs, like examining the logs and comparing to what was recorded and what was happening, yeah, or what was happened, yeah, what happened earlier, yeah. Okay, now in Security Plus, we also learn about principles of least privilege. Least privilege is the principle that establishes that the user and software should have the minimal level of access that is necessary for them to perform duties required of them. So, for example, applies to access to facilities, computer hardware, software, and information, and you can assign only the level of access required to perform necessary tasks. For example, like if this guy, let's say Alice, is just a normal user who needs the access to, let's say, Office application, then you should just give her, access to that application. Yeah, you should not give her, Alice, the admin rights. Okay? So you only give the least privilege access to the user just to perform their needed task. Yeah. So for example, if let's say if this guy, let's say Peter, needs to only access accounting software, then you should only give him user access rather than admin access, right? Because actually, when we learn about security and cybersecurity, you can actually see the real examples of why least privilege is very useful, especially to I would say to encourage attacker to actually escalate the privilege to the highest level, because they will need to do something, you know, extra to make sure that they can have the access as a root or admin. Now, privilege management is related to the use of authentication and authorization mechanism to provide centralized and decentralized administration of users and group access control. For example, having Active Directory. Yeah, having Active Directory to manage the privilege level of your user is a very good example, yeah, of privilege management. Or maybe something called SSO, or single sign-on, an aspect of privilege management that provide users with one-time authentication to multiple resources, servers, or site. Imagine if, let's say, you log on to a particular website and you normally need to create a new user account, right? Nowadays, you can even use, let's say, Facebook, your Facebook account, or LinkedIn account, or even Google to actually log on to a particular website. And Google themselves, they use single sign-on, so that when you log on to, let's say, by using a single Google account, like your Gmail, for example, as the username, you can actually access any applications created and managed by Google. So you can access like Facebook, or maybe like Google Docs, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we have come to the second activity. Yeah, you can take a screenshot of this, identifying basic security controls. This is our second activity. So here you are the security administrator of Developed Tech Industries, a manufacturer of home electronics, and you want to identify information security control that could be beneficial for developed tech to implement. So let's take a break, maybe for about 5 to 10 minutes while discussing this activity. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
Yes,
you.
sir.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can see
Okay.
it.
Okay, good. So let's continue with our last topic for today, cryptography. So the cryptography here is the science of hiding information, most commonly by encoding and decoding a secret code into used to send messages. Like for example, encoding here means encrypt, and decoding here means decrypt. So you need to be able to encrypt a message or messages into something that is unreadable to others. Yeah. So this is based on mathematics and computer science, which is normally has the intended objective, which is to protect data in transit and data at rest. Now, talking about encryption and decryption. Encryption here is a mechanism or technique that converts data from plain text, which is clear text, into coded or known as hypertext, so that only authorized parties with the necessary decryption information can decode and read the data. Maybe some of you have watched, or I would say seen, some movies about encryption and cryptography related techniques. An example is the U571, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and also the movie with the title of I forget the movie, the title of the movie. About Alan Turing. Yeah, Not Beautiful Mind. It's something related to the Enigma. The Enigma machine used by German. In World War II. Maybe someone can recall. I forgot the name of the movie. Anyway, so
The imitation game.
Yes, correct. That's the correct one. So you need to watch this U571 and that movie to understand about encryption. So you need to make sure that the message you send cannot be read by others by applying some mathematical computation as well as having the key. Yeah. Maybe someone can type the movie title so I can actually perhaps I have the movie, but I just forgot the name of the movie. Anyway, so plain text is the unencrypted data that is meant to be encrypted before transmission, or the result of decrypting encrypted data. So the clear text data is known as plain text, while the encoded unreadable data is known as ciphertext. So the process of decrypting the encoded data or the ciphertext is known as decryption. So this is a cryptographic technique that covers ciphertext into plain text. Okay, so the result is the clear text, the unencrypted readable data that is not meant to be encrypted. And remember that only authorized parties with decryption information can read encrypted files. One-way encryption is not meant to be decrypted, while two-way encryption is meant to be decrypted. So we have one-way encryption, which is not meant to be decrypted, while the two-way encryption meant to be decrypted, meaning that both party needs to agree on something, like for example, agree on the password or the I would say, secret. So this graphic actually explains the process of encryption and decryption. As you can see, the plain text here, yeah, the plain text goes into the encryption process, and the result is the ciphertext. Of course, the encryption will use a specific key to be able to decrypt from the ciphertext as the plain text. The process of decrypting ciphertext to plain text is known as decryption. Yeah. Now, both encryption and decryption have security goals, or basically cryptography has several security goals, including confidentiality, meaning that we need to make sure that the confidentiality of the data or information is maintained. No one can actually, read the data or, get the plain text. While integrity, meaning that you can use cryptography to maintain the integrity of a particular data. No authorized modification of the data is allowed. And remember the non-repudiation, yeah, or non-deniable, making sure that the sent messages cannot be denied, or we can say that the identity of the sender will be refilled, even though the sender say, no, I did not send the message. And you know about authentication, which is the process of proving your identity, and access control, which is actually the system taking care of, the authentication process. Okay, the cipher or ciphers is an algorithm used to encrypt or decrypt data, while enciphering is the process of translating plain text to the ciphertext. You can also use these terminologies, enciphering and deciphering, which is the process of translating ciphertext to the plain text. So which is actually the process of, encryption and decryption, right? So ciphers alter individual letters or bit to scramble message or a particular message. Yeah, you can use like words, phrases, or resembles a secret language. And the science of breaking codes and ciphers are called cryptanalysis or cryptanalysis. And the key, remember that the key is a piece of information that is used in conjunction with algorithm to process or to perform encryption and decryption. You will need to have a very unique key to be able to actually encrypt and decrypt your data. For example, the key would be like, Hail Hydra, like in the Imitation Game movie. So we use the key to produce different ciphertexts. Yeah. So for each algorithm, longer key provides stronger encryption. Yeah. Could be anything, static or even like, dynamic keys. And in cryptography, you should know that we have two different types of encryption. The first one is called symmetric. Is a two-way encryption scheme in which encryption and decryptions are both performed by the same key. This is also known as shared key encryption, or also known as public key encryption, because you are using, I was wrong. Shared key encryption is known as symmetric, where you use same key, single key, so shared key encryption. So for example, if you use one single password or passphrase to actually encrypt your message, you always need to use that same key to decrypt your message. Yeah. In this case, in fact, confidentiality is an issue because you need to share your key with the other partner, right? With your friend, for example. Yeah. This is also known as secret key, shared key, or private key. Common alternate names. Okay. Now there's another one called asymmetric encryption. I'll discuss about, yeah, the key is actually not the algorithm. This is actually a unique unique thing that you need to provide to actually create the result, different result. So the algorithm used to encrypt and decrypt is not a key. Algorithm is an algorithm, like for example, MD5 algorithm, or maybe like advanced encryption standard, yeah, something like that. So asymmetric meaning that you need to have two-way encryption scheme, yeah, that is use paired public and private key. So in symmetric encryption, you could actually achieve the confidentiality because you only share the public key rather than private key. Private key will be kept secret. So you will have two different types of keys. The first one is called private key, which is normally kept secret, while public key is a component where you can actually share this public key so that someone can actually decrypt the message or messages so that they can get the same result. Okay, then we have key generation, which is the process of producing public and private key pair by using specific application. Yeah, you can actually use, just an example of an OTP. OTP, the process of creating OTP is called key generation. Yeah, just an example. Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. So for asymmetric, the user will need to use public key to encrypt the message, and the recipient will use private key to decrypt. Yeah. Please do some more reading on cryptography topic because this is quite confusing. Yeah. Especially when you are dealing with the questions related to public and private key. And hashing is a process of function that transform plain text to ciphertext that cannot be directly decrypted. Yeah, you can have something like MD5, SHA-1, SHA-256, 512. Yeah, so the hash or the hash value or the message digest is the value that results from hashing encryption. You can use this in several password authentication scheme, or even when you create signature for your email, and even for verifying file integrity. Yeah, so you can use like MD5 sum or WinMD5 to actually create the hash of a particular file, or even bunch of files. And normally remember that hashing is not related to secrecy. Hashing is more focused on providing integrity rather than confidentiality. I think this is the last one, steganography, the one I mentioned earlier, that this is actually an alternative encryption technique or mechanism that hides secret message or messages by enclosing them in an ordinary message. Like for example, this one, you can hide image inside an image. Yeah. or embed text in images. Okay, so that's about cryptography, encryption, decryption. Yeah, I've already shared with you the study guide. Please also do some reading. Yeah, and the last activity for today is the same thing. You are the security administrator, and you need to prepare for implementing cryptographic technologies. Examine hashing functionalities. Like, for example, make sure that you understand the difference between MD5, SHA-1, SHA-256, 512, base 64, and so on. And also identify basic cryptography concepts. Yeah. I want you to also read some information or related topics. So cryptography concept is very important. And yeah, so please take a screenshot on this one. Activity identifying basic cryptography concept. We'll be discussing this in our Telegram group. Okay. And the last reflective questions, the last things to discuss is about reflective question. Number one, which of the basic security concepts in this lesson were familiar to you and which were new? Number two, can you describe some real-world situations where you use basic security techniques such as authentication, access control, and encryption? Yeah. Please also take a screenshot on this so that we can actually do a discussion. All right. So if you have any question, please do the discussion in our chat room, not here. Yeah. And I believe this is the end of my presentation. So hopefully you have enjoyed, or you enjoy this first lesson. And if you have any feedback, questions, comments, anything, let me know. Thank you.